My name is Ashley Davis and I'm lead developer at Real Serious Games. I've got tonight with me Jason Christie, who's lead artist, and Adam Single, who's senior developer. We've also got some other RSG guys sitting in the second row here, so you can also hit them up for answers on some of this stuff as well. They've both worked on this stuff with us. So tonight I'm going to just give a little bit of an overview of the company, sort of where we've come from, the projects we've done in the past, which isn't always VR. So I'm going to concentrate on the VR stuff, and we're going to concentrate on the Envizion VR Experience, which is what we've been demonstrating and which is what we've just launched recently. So I'm just going to get that out of the way pretty quickly. Hopefully it won't be too boring. These guys are then going to talk about some of the more technical, deeper stuff, hopefully, which is what you're here to learn about. So we'll get on with it. So Real Serious Games. We've been around for a bit over 5 years now. The company was founded by Andrew Goldston and Karen Sanders. We move really quickly. We're very client focused, so we work closely with clients, get our projects out there quickly. So all these guys know that we go through projects in weeks. Sometimes the longer ones are a few months. So in the time we've been around, we've done over 200 projects. We've got roughly 20 employees. The team has background from all sorts of areas. So we've got people from construction, engineering, filmmaking, and of course game development. So everyone that's here from Real Serious Games tonight has basically come from game development. The breadth of experience we've got allows us to tackle projects in a fairly unique way. So it's one of our strengths. By the way, if anyone wants to ask questions at any time, just put your hand up, it's fine. These are some of our clients. I've just lifted this directly from our website. So we've worked for some of the biggest construction companies there are. You probably recognise some of the names like John Holland, Lend Lease, etc. One of our recent projects, which wasn't VR, of course, was Kingston Smith Drive. So we did a visualisation of that. I'm going to play a quick video. This is going to give you a broad perspective of the stuff that we've done. So it's got some VR stuff and it's got some of our other visualisation. Where are we up to? So this is just about a minute and a half. Oh, I don't know if we've got audio.
Yeah, I can hear it. Just turn it up.
Only out of that after that, right?
Yeah. It's only music anyway. So we've done a bunch of stuff, not just VR. The past few years, though, we've been pushing into the VR area. We've done a few commercial projects, so I'm just going to cover them quickly. So the first thing we did was a demo that we took to the SimTech conference that was in Brisbane in 2013. And we basically, it wasn't a commercial project, it was a demonstration of our capability and we were acquiring VR experience while we were doing it. So we took this and we displayed it in our booth, and we had a lot of people lining up to play it. It was basically like a bunch of sort of previous work that we'd done that we strung together and put into VR. This is a top-down view of one that we call the safety scene. And you're actually, like when you're in VR looking at this, you're on the ground, kind of sort of from the perspective almost of this workman here, sort of experiencing a safety incident. And it's just interesting to be in the kind of the middle of that when the accident is happening. So that was a fun project, and it got a lot of attention, and it got us keen to kind of do more VR. So the year after, we did. It's a training simulation of a tunnel boring machine, but it's more than that. It's sort of like a multiplayer thing, so you could have multiple people in the experience at once, guided through it by a trainer. Now, tunnel boring machines are like very big, very expensive, very dangerous, and they operate deep underground. So it's the perfect opportunity really for a VR experience. I'm just going to show another quick video. So we actually got on ABC's Catalyst 2014, and they were doing a segment about just the actual tunnel in general, which is Northwest Rail Link in Sydney. And this is just a small segment that sort of focused on what we were doing as part of that.
One of the really impressive features of this tunnel boring technology is that I can experience the whole thing in virtual reality before we even go underground in it. Top of the tunnel's just around here, and if I look over the edge of the rail again, I do get a sense of vertigo, and I'm looking down at all the segments that are below me that are going to be wrapped around the side of the tunnel. So having been here, I'm feeling more than prepared.
So they put multiple people through that at once, and that's still in use there. I think they're probably drilling the tunnel right now, but that's the first round of training that people go through before they actually go on the machinery. We could probably do a whole talk on that, but I'll just skip over that. In 2014, we also did a project called Cyanide Skid. This is for a company called Synergen Met. They sell a portable cyanide processing plant. So it's actually about the size of a shipping container. So it's not that small, but it's the kind of thing they can move around, put on site at a mine, and then they can make this, as far as I understand it, make their cyanide on site, which is a hell of a lot safer than transporting it by truck through towns and whatnot. They came to us. They were after a video that kind of showed their product and could help their clients understand what they were getting with this. And it was a difficult and complicated thing for them to explain, and we convinced them that virtual reality was the way to kind of demonstrate it. We could actually, have them in there looking at it, have annotations describing what parts of the plant do what. So another interesting project that we've done. So that brings us to Envizion. We're going to talk more about that in a sec, and hopefully most of you have seen the demo. This is VR Real Series games. So our tradition is that when you're beta testing one of the VR apps and you've got it on and you can't hear what's going on, or in these cases, a lot of these cases you can, but everyone crowds around you, pulls their silly faces, and you get your photo taken. So there's a bit of fun there. Part of the process we've used, though, is we've had kind of like a VR committee where everyone would come together in a meeting and everyone would take responsibility for different research areas, and then we'd go off, we'd do the research, come back, report, and we had quite a few of these meetings. These are some pictures of Jason here. I just thought that one was funny because he's got a Leap Motion strapped to his head the first time I had to take that photo. And then in this one on the right, he's got the Leap Motion stuck to the Oculus. And I actually had a go at this one. It's really cool. So you can actually manipulate this virtual equipment with your hands. And we're not using it for any projects yet, but it's just a cool bit of R&D. So we also use Slack at work. So we have a VR channel in Slack where we're always posting news and ideas on VR. That's a little bit of how we do our VR research. Now, the Envizion project was done for a company called Envizion. So they're a training company that's based in Cairns. They specialise in training for Indigenous people. They're actually a leader in their field, and they've got a proven track record of delivering results. Mentoring people, getting them into jobs, and then following up to see how they went and making them successful. There's some cool stuff online about them. I might leave you guys to Google that later. So the Envizion VR Experience, hopefully most of you have tried it. It's it's a sequence of 360 videos. They're designed to be sort of aspirational or inspirational for young people watching them, to get an idea of what career options or industries are available for them to work in. And they're playing this to people in remote communities where they don't necessarily have the kind of access to information that we have here, so they don't necessarily know what's available. So we have a combination of a live filmed person, kind of like an interview, combined with a virtual modelled background, and they're composited together. All the compositing's done offline, and pretty much what you see in the player is the 360 video. It's all done in a Unity build, so we can add whatever interactivity we want as well. So there's 5 guides in total, as we call them, and they each represent their different careers and industries where they've been successful. And this actually launched in January, so this is touring around North Queensland now. It's going to be going for a few years, and hopefully it's going to see continued success, and they're already talking about franchising it in other states. So it's going to be really cool to see where it goes. This is what the bus looks like at the launch. So they painted up the side of it really nicely. There was quite a few, this was in Cairns. There's quite a few important people, local politicians, local elders from the Indigenous community. The Queensland Police Commissioner was there. It was a really good event. This is what the bus looks like inside. So it's quite small, but Real Serious Games designed the layout of it for safety and user experience and efficiency, and there's plenty of room for an administrator to move around between people. We can fit 6 to 8 people at a time, I think, in there, and it's fully air conditioned as well, so it can go up far north where it's really hot and it won't affect the experience. I'm going to hand over to Jason Christie now to talk more about the tech.
Cheers. So Ash is the microphone on. Does it have to be up high? Cool. Yeah, so my name's Jason. I'm the lead artist at Real Serious Games. My experience is, does anyone know Chrome Studios? Maybe a few people remember it. So I worked there for 12 years as a lead artist. Not the whole 12 years, maybe the last 5 as lead. Developed heaps of games, Spyro and Star Wars, and there's a lot of games we developed there. So my primary experience comes from games, so a lot of the stuff we do at RSG translates to game development, so it's very similar. All the stuff you saw in that first video was all real-time as well, so nothing's... everything we do is a real-time build. We do capture out to video, but what you saw there can be played as a real-time build, and you can fly around and everything like that. So what I'm going to talk about is a little bit of the... I don't have as many slides as Ash, so I'm just going to talk. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the reason we chose the Gear over the Oculus. How many people doing work with the Oculus at the moment will have a DK2? All right, so you guys know the the technical problems that you have with the DK and trying to maybe say have it as a client tool. We developed on the DK1. The software was relatively stable. We went over to the DK2. It was a lot of development from Oculus, so the software was really unstable. It was really hard to develop for the system. When you would play it, you'd have to drag the screen over to the Oculus view, or you could run it as a direct to Oculus. Yeah, right now it's a lot better. As we were probably 3/4 of the way through this, a lot of the new tools come out. You could go direct to Rift, which means that you could be in Unity and you hit a little button and you don't even need to set cameras up. Just put the Oculus on, go direct to Rift, and anything in your scene will play on the Oculus. So it did improve a lot, but it's still one of those things where it's a little bit of a barrier between that and a commercial product. I think the commercial product will solve a lot of the issues that this one has. And people just like the portability of the gear, and it's light and they can move it around. Some of the disadvantages of the gear is it doesn't have a depth camera. So I'll try to explain it in simple terms. But the Oculus has a depth camera, so just say I have my hand up in front, it's in 3D, and I move my head around it, it's gonna track it properly. If you're in the GearVR, there's no depth, so my hand will follow the background image, right? And that can make people feel a bit ill. On the video, if you've watched the demo and the one on the gear, it's a mono image, so it's only one to both eyes. When you do stereo, it's two images, one to each eye, slightly offset. The other problem with that too is the retail kit, the commercial kits will be able to adjust the PID, the eye distance. If you don't get that right, it can make people feel give them a bit of a headache, make them feel a bit sick. So the depth is really important, but we do a lot of things to overcome making people sick. We have a client product and we can't make people sick. Okay, so as soon as a client goes in our product and anyone gets sick or anyone feels ill, then they're not going to use the device. So we had to be really careful of that. Some of the things we use to combat that is we don't move the player and they can't see when they're moving. So you probably, if anyone's got like the Oculus or the gear and you're standing still or sitting down and then all of a sudden you're moving and your brain just starts going, what's going on? Like I can see things moving and you get that motion sickness feeling. We need to avoid that. So all our experiences are static and then you fade and then you move to a location and the image comes back. So this is after like 2 or 3 years of developing for these things that we've come across. We all made ourselves sick when we got the DK1. So playing Half-Life and it wasn't good. And the problem with getting sick in the original DK or even this one here is people don't want to go back in it. So as soon as you make someone sick, they just avoid it. Okay, so back to why we chose the gear. The client liked the gear because it was portable. It was going to be on a bus, so we had constraints with heat. So you can imagine like 6 beefy computers all pumping out heat. It was going to be an issue. Yeah, in far north Queensland. We went to the demo up in Cairns and it was ridiculous. It was like I think people there were saying it was hot, so it was it was pretty hot and really humid. So condensation coming off the walls of the bus, and it was pretty. I think it was about 95% humidity, so it was pretty bad. So that's why we went with this system. It was robust. Samsung have done a great job on this unit. The S7 that comes out will have a free free gear. So it'll become a lot more people will be using it. So if you look at the store there now, people are selling apps. There's not many free ones. And people are making money on it. So if you want to invest in some smaller games, that would be a good platform to go to initially. Same with the Oculus. That's pretty starved for content, and the Vive as well is going to be pretty starved. But Samsung have a really functional store and a lot of good products on there. So yeah. And they just released a web viewer that you can watch YouTube 360 videos. Now, you could do that with the Google Cardboard, but now you can do it with this, and it's a pretty good experience with that. So that's why we chose that. Okay, so the R&D process that we went through. Now the problems with the GearVR are performance. Okay, so it's running a phone. So we had to make sure that what we were showing was running at least 60, at least 30, mostly 60. It's a video, so it didn't really matter. But we just made sure that it was at above a frame rate that you wouldn't notice any problems. Running 3D content on that is really hard. So if you've made games before, and say you've developed on like a low-end system or a PS2, I don't know how people have worked on the older systems, you have to almost develop it like that. You have to be extremely careful, vigilant, and and efficient. And RSG, we're pretty good, but we have really short deadlines, and we can't spend 3 days making a tree optimized to the point when it's going to be fine for this thing. So any drop in frame rate on that, you'll get black borders, and it can be pretty bad. The Oculus is worse. If you drop below 90, you'll start getting black frames. The new software they released for that was to make sure that people demoing this on low-end machines weren't making their clients sick as well. So it was a big concern for Oculus as well. So that's why we decided to go the video route. We didn't have to worry about frame rate. So how we did it was, hang on, okay. This is Jov. He's not here tonight, but he's one of the guys that works for us. He does all our video work and video post-production. So you can see here, it's a simple setup, green screen. We've got one of the actors here if you saw the demo. That process is pretty simple. And then you see the guy there. So inside Unity, this is a 3D scene, standard 3D Unity scene. Here's a billboard. We have a camera that captures this scene as a 360 image, right? So once they're all put in here, it is all real 3D. We play it, and it captures each frame. So we can capture out the duration of the video as individual frames. Then we bring that into Premiere. Once it's in Premiere, or in After Effects, once it's in After Effects, we have a software called Skybox. Has anyone heard of Skybox? Okay, so Skybox is pretty new, and it's an Adobe product. Adobe have clued on, like they're pretty, when it comes to this kind of stuff, they're already clued on. So what Skybox does is allows you to add 3D elements to your scene, to a video scene, right? So if anyone had a go at one of the demos and they saw any interactive stuff happening, that was all post. We have a system here where it's not in this slide or anything, but it has arrows showing how this hydroponic system works. So it's pretty useful. This is like another. So you can see how the image is a sphere, you know. Another image of Mario. We got to know these guys really well, and then we met them. So it was funny because we worked with them and we saw them every day, and then we got to see them. Yeah, it was pretty cool. Okay. Yeah, so that's why we went through to doing the 360 captures. Why we went mono? Okay, so the thing between mono and stereo, but it comes back down to that depth camera. Okay, so we could do stereographic images, which does the left and right eye, and it gives you much more depth. I don't know if anyone noticed it, anyone that went through these demos, it's a mono image. The scale would have been a little bit out. Things may have seemed a little bit big when you're close to stuff. It's basically like, doing one eye and putting it in the middle of your head and having no depth, right? So as soon as we did some tests with the stereo, after about a minute you got eye strain. And because also people would see it and it would really look like this thing's in front of this other thing, and then they'll try to look around it and they would move at the same time, and it'd make people feel really ill. So that's why we went mono. And also the capture process is much quicker mono out of Unity. The capture stuff we used is called Panoramic 360, and it's a tool on the asset store. Anyone can buy it. We modified it. All the stuff we get, we modify heavily. We have, Adam's going to talk a little bit more about the streaming video stuff as well, but we do use the asset store a lot, but we do modify most of the content. One of our biggest issues with this was streaming 300 or 400 meg videos from storage to the player, because that happened in real time, and that was a bit of a challenge for us. But problem with Unity, if anyone's used Unity and you try to put a video in there, it wants to convert it to some shitty format, and then it doesn't run very well, and it makes a really big file size, and it takes hours sometimes. So you definitely don't want to let Unity handle your video. You want to keep it outside of Unity and stream it if you're going to be doing video content. The other option for gear as well is, so the other big hurdle we had was, this is Samsung, and they're very much like Apple. They want to control their device and they don't want anyone to do stuff with it. So for us to run our content externally, we have to run the app outside of the gear, then put it inside the gear, and then it will run. So if anyone's going to be developing from that, just keep that in mind, that until it becomes a registered product on their store, you have to kind of do a few workarounds of getting it to work. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So if anyone has any questions initially, yep.
Is there a reason you chose to do your 360 output in Unity rather than going back to a traditional 3D modeling software, given that it's not being run in real time for the end product?
Yeah, Unity has all the cool stuff, all the shaders. The terrain, how we did the terrain, it's using the relief mapper terrain. So
Unity gave us options because we already knew it really well. And even though we're mostly just playing videos, we can put in whatever interactivity we want, we can. So we've got flexibility with Unity.
And it's instant feedback. We put it in, we can play it. Yeah, you can see what's going on. Yeah.
And the scenes that we were building here were quite similar to the type of stuff we do outside of VR. So a lot of the tech for, like Jason was saying, for the scenery and what we were doing, we had a pretty good pipeline for that already.
Yeah.
So we knew that we could do that quite fast.
Yeah. We put out 5 scenes in 6 days. So it's yeah, we've got it down to a fine art. Anyone else?
Is there any 360 video, or is it that part's rendered and it's just the person that's videoed?
So yeah, so she was a good example. Like I say, she's on a billboard, and the scene is real. So it's a real scene in there. So it's 3D, right? So this is a real scene. She's a billboard, and the video gets played on it. Then we have a little thing in the scene that renders that whole scene to a sphere. And then when you splay it out, it looks like those images I showed you. And then we put that, once it's converted, we put that back. This is what Adam worked on. I'll let him talk more about it, but it puts that video onto the sphere, and then it lets you look around. Yeah.
So you're right, only the person is actually filming.
Yeah.
I'm interested in the logistics around running the GearVR, given that one of the downsides is that it's only got about an hour or so before it starts freaking out with heat.
Yeah,
So do you have plenty that you turn over if you get tight enough to people through, or how do you?
Yeah, no, we the guys probably talk a bit about it as well because they developed on it, but the guys worked out some things to stop the CPU from throttling because it's video as well. The 3D content's really what burns the phones.
We also constantly monitor that from telemetry from the device, which I'll show a screenshot of that at the end.
Yeah.
Could you just go through some of the side loading kind of aspects of the content that you were bringing into GearVR and how that actually works?
Yep. Adam probably doing a bit more of that.
Sure.
I don't want to just steal his thunder, but yeah, he worked on that stuff. It's a good question, so just remember it for Adam. Yeah.
We'll do mostly.
Yeah, you can do yours now.
We'll
Yeah.
do some more questions at the end. So my name's Adam Single. I'm a code monkey. My fellow menagerie are in the second row. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what our role was here. As you can see from what we've already described of the pipeline, it's fairly art heavy. The pipeline really relied on these guys to build the scenes, build the content. They were recording the rendering out onto the sphere, and our job was basically to build something that was going to run on the device and play a video. It came into a bit more than that once we started adding the telemetry that Ash was talking about, and then we'll get back into that in a little bit. But our role tended to be just to figure out the pipeline for the artists, what it was going to be, what was going to be possible. So before we'd sort of figured out that it was going to be video, we had to figure out if we were going to be able to play video on the Android devices, if it was going to be able to play at a good enough resolution to be viable, to look good enough. So these are some of our goals that we sort of identified early on as our R&D pipeline goals. So we needed a way to be able to stream the video on Android, and we knew we didn't have enough time to write something ourselves. So we had to look for existing solutions and see if there was going to be anything viable. And we tried a few. There were a couple that I think were quite expensive, and I'll talk about which one we went with in the end shortly. We also needed a way to be able to play them on PC, just so that our sort of debug pipeline wasn't going to be reliant on us doing a build and putting it on a device and going through it on the device. We needed at least to be able to play it in the editor and see visually or what's happening. Test, as I mentioned, we've got a debug menu, so being able to test the interactions for the debug menu shouldn't need to be in the device to be able to do that. We need to be able to do that faster. We quickly realized that we needed an alternative to the Unity sort of default sphere, and the GeoSphere out of Max also didn't seem to solve the problem that we had, and I'll talk about that in a bit more detail coming up. The debug menu was a big one, and for anyone who's done any sort of VR content, especially mobile VR content, you probably quickly realize that once you're in there, it's very hard to interact in any sort of developer way with what you've just built. You're as cut off from your sort of development environment as everyone around you is cut off from what you're doing in there. So you need a way to be able to at least get access to some debug options while you're in there. And we also needed a way for the people not in there to have some idea of what's happening for the person that's in there. So that's the telemetry that we come back to. We needed a fast turnaround on the video changes, on the builds, and as Jason already pointed out, Unity likes to do some funky stuff with your format if you drop it in. So it was pretty clear that we didn't want a solution that meant the videos were actually in the build of the project. So the final APK that you get out was going to have multiple issues if the videos were built into that. It was going to be massive for starters. It would mean every time there was any change to one of those videos, no matter how small, you had to do a whole new build and copy across a whole new APK, which was going to be massive. And we knew we were going to have an issue with the conversion that Unity does. There were options around that, like it has its streaming assets folder where it intentionally ignores anything you put in there, and you can stream in from that knowing it's been unaffected. But then we still had the other problems of it existing inside the application itself. And then there were some GearVR specific issues, like we mentioned before. I think someone mentioned temperature. That was something that we needed to monitor as well. So these are our solutions. The Easy Movie Texture plugin, which is $55, which seems fairly steep, especially for what we sort of normally look at on the asset store. There's usually some really good options, but for what it does, it's actually well worth the price. It has streaming options for streaming the video from inside the project, streaming it from the web, or streaming it from storage on the device. It only works on mobile, so it wasn't going to solve our problem with being able to stream or watch the videos in the editor or in a PC build. But it did work beautifully for that, and we found good reviews for it, and it was worth the $55 to try. The editor one is much more expensive, but I think we had already committed to buying it at that point for capturing. So we had the advantage that, from my point of view, from the devs team point of view, we already had it, and we knew that we could work with it, and we knew it could do what we wanted to do. So that one was sold for us, even though it was more expensive.
And I know the guys that made that, so I know the money's gone to a good cause.
So the Sphere. The Sphere has a big problem. The Unity Sphere has a big problem with what I call magic mirrors. So at the top and bottom of the Sphere, you get this weird cross where the UVs just don't line up, and so anything that crosses that sort of passes through that gets warped. Like it looks like it's passing through one of those magic mirror mazes. It sort of disappears out of one and comes out another one. And the GeoSphere that came out of Max seemed to do a very similar thing. It was much less obvious, but it still wasn't right. You still got some weird pinching around the top and bottom, which sort of it was really quick to break your immersion. If you're looking around at the sky and there's some really nice clouds and you're feeling like you're out in this open space, and then there's this weird warp at the top where the eagle disappears into it and it just flips you out. So I did a bit of research on basically on geospheres, on spheres that were designed to map textures of planets and globes. And I came across a really great tutorial by Cat-like Coding. I don't know if anyone's seen that website, but if anyone's a C# coder or especially a Unity coder, Cat-like Coding has tons and tons of really great tutorials. They're quite long. They're very detailed, lots of screenshots. And this was one that he was actually commissioned to do for this other site, so the link isn't on the Cat-like Coding site. But it programmatically creates a sphere using, starting with an octahedron, and then tessellating it down from that. So we wrote some code that will create it. So on the left here, as you can see, it's really high poly, but we could get away with that because we're just playing a video on there. We knew we had pretty much no other geometry in the scene, so we didn't have to worry too much about that. And we could bring that down if we needed to. That's one of Unity's pre-built ones. It's pretty hard to tell the difference just by looking at the geometry. But if you look at the results, they're drastically different. Like you can see
looking straight up in the air?
That's straight up in the air, yeah. So that's where I tried to time the video so it was almost the exact same moment, but I don't think I did a perfect job. But you can see the eagle disappearing into the magic mirrors. And we needed a solution to that. So that was a nice free solution. So I would recommend, definitely, we'll probably put the slides up, provide them somewhere, Lex will put them up somewhere, and I definitely would recommend if you're looking at doing any sort of sphere in VR that you look at that. So that code's run. I just wrote a little sort of editor script that could run it and generate it and save it in the scene. So it doesn't get built at runtime. It just gets built sort of offline and then saved in the scene. So you only need to do it once. There's no hit to being able to do that. The debug menu, this is pretty much what it looks like at the end. It started out way simpler than this. I think it had like 2 buttons on it, and we thought that was all we were going to need. But that's a good lesson. That's never going to stay. Every time we added a new thing in there and someone got in, especially the boss, he'd think of something else that he'd like to do in there.
The lesson is if you're on a dev team and you add a good debug feature and everyone loves it, it's going to become a product feature. So
this was never in the original scope. This was just for us. So we thought, we're going to need this. And then as soon as someone saw it, they're like, oh, yeah, we're going to need this. This is going to have to stay in. It was only intended to be in like a debug build. But some of the things it's doing here that you can do here, there's obviously the obvious video control, so you can skip through the video experiences or pause it if you're in there. The one at the end is for looping through, so that if you just wanted to have the whole thing running, we could do like some soak testing without it going back to the interactive part. So at the end of this, it would normally you'd have to take it out or shut it down, or it'd go back to the first scene that some of you might have seen when you tried it, and you've got to look at the triangle to sort of start the experience. We needed a way to be able to have this running sort of overnight or something and just be collecting data on how long it lasts, how much the battery gets used up, and just keep looping through. So that one's just designed to do that. The first one is one of the interesting ones. So that first one starts like a recording process that basically sends to a database your sort of head position, your head rotation over time. And so we use that to build a sort of perfect example of someone who's completely attentive to the person talking. So then we could compare that to what people were doing and see how much time they spent actually looking at the person talking and how much time they spend looking around at their environment. What you get out of that's a bit hard to tell. Like, it could be that they're not engaged with the content that the person's talking about, or it could be that they've never seen VR before and the fact that they're standing on a mine site is really amazing and they're just looking around. So that's...
That tech's really useful if you want to do, say, safety videos, or if you can, an instructor could then see that if the person's looking at a problem, or you could look at the game as well, you can do it for games.
And we collect all the data about what people was looking at, so we could potentially make a reconstruction later and do heat maps or something on the video to find out what areas of the video they found interesting.
It was one of those things where it was just worth collecting the data, even if we weren't 100% sure what we'd do with it straight away. Now that we've got it, we can sort of map that in various ways. And then you can see we're getting some other metrics out there. So we were already, I think, collecting a lot of these metrics, like the battery percentage and the the heat's actually the battery heat, right? Because the Oculus SDK didn't give us access to sort of the CPU temperature or the phone's temperature, and we hadn't.
And the battery explodes before the CPU does.
Yeah, we're hoping that's the case. So, but it gives us an indication at least once it starts ramping up. Again, because we sort of store these metrics over time, we can at least see when anomalies start changing. We can see when that starts to spike for some reason. And the heartbeat there, the frame rate, sorry, is obviously another important one. But they were originally being recorded and sent to a database and sent to the telemetrics that we'll look at later so that we could see them. But that was another thing that sort of the boss quickly realized, that when he was in there, he wanted to know what was happening. He's like, oh, it feels like the frame rate's dropped. What's the frame rate? He kept asking, so we just put it in. Yeah, that was probably the PC build. So I'm pretty sure the PC build actually just picks random numbers. Same with the temperature. I'm pretty sure that's just a series of random numbers. It was all just for debugging at that point. And then you'll see we've just got some extra logging out there so that we can tell off builds when they're talking to the right server. So because the device there is completely wireless, it's not tethered to anything, so it's actually talking to a server that's running on the bus. So if that wasn't working, sort of first port of call was just to check if we'd accidentally done a build that was talking to one of our local sort of in-house servers instead of the one it was supposed to be talking to. And revision code has to do with, like I said, we kept all our videos out, which means that the videos aren't controlled sort of by the same process of QA that the build does. The videos are sort of independent, and they need to be sort of tracked independently and verified independently. So this way we can at least tell what version of the videos they're looking at. If something doesn't look right, if it looks like it's using an old video that we thought we'd updated, we know if that didn't work or if it's a different problem. So this is, in fact, I'm probably about to repeat everything I've just got here. But the fast turnaround of the videos was our sort of only real general issue. The rest of them came down to solving sort of gear-specific ones. So the plugin that we used gave us the option to be able to have those outside. So they are stored just on the device, just in a folder that we put on there. I think we wrote our own little Android plugin to get access to sort of the storage device, the storage path on the device, so that they didn't have to sit inside the project. And that meant that if the build was fine, if we didn't make any changes to the build, we could literally just sort of plug the phone in and change a video out and test it. So the artists wouldn't need to come to us at all for a new build. They wouldn't need to fire off anything. If they're just checking videos or fixing video content, they can do that just off one build and have the device sitting there.
We have the client, even the client who uses this, we just send them videos and they do it themselves. They put it on the devices.
Yeah.
You know, from a bus and all the territory.
We didn't really talk about the portal, did we?
No, we can say a little about where we're going with that.
One of the things we quickly realized with working with a client is that you have and with our system here where our videos are outside of our APK, so we've got a situation where we can't just say, here's the latest file, just run it and it'll all be fine. We had a situation where you've got an APK and they might pick the wrong one, and then they've still got to get the right videos in, and then there's sort of a configuration file next to the videos that the application reads to know how to separate out the experiences and what order to play them in, and what metrics to attach to it so that we can sort of monitor what's being played. And as sort of simple as it sounds, it's sort of just copy all these files and put them in this folder. It's still surprisingly easy for that to go horribly wrong. So we started designing and working on what we call our sort of portal app. And it's sort of a pure Android app outside of Unity, which was a first for us. And its purpose was to sort of check a server for like a revision or a version, and be able to recognize that there's an update, download the necessary files and install it all for them. So it sort of brings it back to a one-touch situation. And so that, we haven't actually rolled it out to the client, but it's in our internal QA now and is working quite nicely. And so that will sort of bring it back for these guys, so we don't have to send them a new video and say, just drop this into and they've got to try and remember to do it on each device. They can use this one thing to tell them to check if they've got the latest version, if there's anything that's out of date or if there's anything new, and then just hit the button and it'll do that for them. It'll download the video.
It's all about reducing human error in the update process, because people make mistakes and things go wrong, and then we pay for that because we've got to spend a lot of time supporting it. and helping them fix it. And so it's really just to work around that and automate as much as possible and just sort of take human error out of the loop as much as possible.
Yeah, I guess the point here is that this issue is sort of a developer issue, and by solving it, we create a user issue that we needed to sort of come up with another solution for. So by making it easy for us to be able to have a turnaround, we had to then figure out how we're going to make that still an easy process for the end user. And these are some of the issues that we had that were sort of gear specific. I mentioned like testing, that's sort of mobile VR specific, just being cut off. So the battery and the device temp, we had to do a couple of settings, and these are just settings that are on like the Oculus SDK that you get access to sort of in the Unity plugin. But these are what we set to get sort of the best sort of temp and battery life out of what we had. And I think we get it through, do we get 3 runs through? I think in QA we got 3-4 runs through before the battery gets low enough that it starts.
Yeah, it's about 3 or 4.
Starts to get, I can't remember if it shuts off or if it starts to get dim. There's a point there where it sort of dims the backlight, and that sort of cuts away a bit. But that actually had a huge impact. So when we first did it and just threw it back on, before we looked at any of this sort of optimization, I think we got 3/5 of the way through, and the battery was starting to give us issues, and the heat was too high, and it was starting to throttle too much. So another issue we had was the delay between taking off the HMD and when the pause sort of would fire in. So there's a little sensor inside the gear that recognizes, it's pretty basic, like you can cover it with your finger and it'll assume there's a face there, but it'll recognize when your face is there. So even though you start the app up outside looking at it, then it says, stick me in the gear, and it won't actually start until you put it on your face. The problem with that is when you take it off your face, you can still hear the audio going, and that delay seemed to be about 10 seconds, where the thing was still running there before it would sort of kick that pause in. So I think originally we started writing another little plugin that would do that would recognize that, but in the end they updated the SDK, I think, and gave us an option for being able to tell when that was happening. But it's not like an automatic thing as much as you would assume it would be. They just added the ability to turn it on so it can handle it. I don't know why they wouldn't just fix it. Testing and frame rate. Frame rate issues we didn't have to worry too much about. So once we actually got on there, it was a concern when we first started. It was something we were constantly checking and watching and being worried about. But in the end, the whole sort of pipeline of focusing on playing video on a Sphere solved a lot of that for us. And as long as we kept our sort of temperature down, the device itself didn't start trying to throttle the frame rate, and we didn't have any issues. And testing we solved using basically the telemetrics, which I think Ash is going to talk about now.
Yep, and then we might take some questions.
Yeah.
So this is a screenshot of the telemetry dashboard. So on the actual bus we have a wireless network set up. So just a fairly standard router and a Windows 7 PC is running the server. It's running some of our code, and you can kind of look at this screen there, and it shows you everyone that's currently connected. So we just basically have some it's pretty simple stuff really, like if you're a coder, to get metrics out of a device, we use HTTP, so the protocol that runs the World Wide Web. We use that protocol to get data from the devices to the server. We collect it in a database. We use MongoDB. And then we use some standard kind of web technologies to build this web page, basically, that you see here. And you can see some of the stuff that Adam was talking about. So you can see like a green eyeball here. That means they're looking at the right thing. You can see some red eyeballs up over there somewhere, and that means they're not looking at the point we expect them to be looking at. So like Adam said, that could be just because they're bored of it, or maybe they're just really interested in something else that's happening elsewhere in the scene. Then we got the memory being used on the device, the battery that's left, the temperature, the frame rate.
That's more
So I think this is from actual devices. And we just collect all this in the database. So this is the real-time view. So this shows you what's currently happening from each of the devices. Now we also have a reporting view. So that's this. It's just another page in this web application. This particular page shows you a summary of recent sessions. So you can see there's a couple of dates here you can set, or you can click buttons over there to say the last hour, the last 12 hours, week and the month, and that'll show you all the sessions that happened in that time period. And it's got, if you've entered their names, it's got their names, it's got how long they went for, and some averages and stuff like of the other stats, and percentages about how much time they spent looking like on focus in the particular videos. There's another aspect to this. I don't have a screenshot of it, but there's two tabs up there. There's the session report and the summary report. The summary report basically summarises this as daily data. So it gives you averages of, like, you know, what the battery usage was over a particular day, that kind of thing. In the sort of the top right-hand corner of this, next to that sort of second close button that's there, there's like a download button. That allows you to download the report as a CSV file as well. So we're just building up all this data at the moment as they're kind of running the experience live, and it's going to be interesting one day to kind of get the database back after like hundreds, I don't know, thousands of people have gone through it, and, you know, see what they did. So I don't know how we can use that yet, but it's always cool to collect data and then find ways to visualize it later. It's too late later if you haven't collected the data, but if you've got it, you can decide later what you want to do with it. Yeah. I love data analysis, so I get really into this sort of stuff.
It's worth noting too that none of this was originally planned.
Yep.
This is all the result of us putting a debug menu in for ourselves.
This is another example of sort of a dev team initiative that becomes a product feature, like sort of like a must-have feature. But it was really cool. Like for the client, it allows them to see what's happening live. It allows us to see when things are overheating or batteries are running out. So it was great for testing, great for support. We can do like a virtual login to their server whenever we need to collect data back about what's been happening. If there's problems, you know, that helps us debug problems and test this.
Also, with mobile phone tech, even having exactly the same model and make of phone doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be the same performance. So sometimes you can get just one that just runs hotter than others, and this helps to sort of identify if that's a concern or if that's an issue, because that can be really hard to spot and very hard to figure out because it's sort of outside of your control.
So I think that's pretty much it. We've got our website up there, and we've got a lot of our code, our useful systems we make, we put on GitHub. So there's code there for people to use if you're a coder. Otherwise, you probably can't make much of that. But and we can open for questions if anyone's got.
Are any of those analytics on GitHub?
Yeah, the metric.
Part of it is, so not the code that actually does this, because that's very custom for this particular job.
Yeah.
It's not something we would have ever put on GitHub, but the actual C# code for outputting metrics from Unity is on GitHub, and we've also got a server, a very simple server that can collect the metrics and put them in the database. So it's the very basics of the telemetry system are up on GitHub.
Are you running generic solutions, or like, who owns the IP for this? Does Envizion own the IP, so the client own the IP itself? Or
I'm not too sure. Normally we work for hire, so for clients.
We own all the software.
Okay.
Yeah, the pipeline for creating it. So we could do it again, you mean?
Yeah, we could just use the secret.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a bunch of sort of like templates that we've created out of previous projects, so it makes it easier to kind of roll out that sort of thing again. Yeah. But I think all the footage of the particular people and that all the particular scenes is, it depends on where the scene came from. Like they gave us some of the scenes, we modelled it all, but they gave us some of the scenes. They gave us all the people. Some of the scenes we took from previous projects that we were allowed to reuse. So it's a bit of a mix-up, I think.
But you own the pipeline out to the metrics and analytics and everything. Yeah.
Yep.
So,
Sorry, no.
I was just going to ask, so with the rendering it as video, I would say that would allow you to actually use like higher geometry and
we can do
more textures and all that sort of stuff.
It's a good way to do it on the gear, and you can make a game. Like it doesn't have to be like this is an interactive video, but it can be done as a game. And there's some guys that are actually doing that at the moment, where you shoot dudes and there's you got a gun and there's like it's all video.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because it can. The way that the system works too is we could have the avatars separate, so they could be a separate entity in the scene rather than being merged together. So you could have dudes.
You could do a great sort of VR equivalent of one of those old like point and click games.
Dog something or other, I can't remember.
Yeah.
There's an old arcade machine where you shoot the guy, but he was all video recorded.
It's like it's like bringing back that old school stuff. There was like an old kung fu game on the 3DO, I think it was, and it was all video and you could hardly control it.
You can mix and match. I mean, it's going to work better as the phones get more powerful as well. We've got it all rendered to video, but you could easily have like a video avatar on top of a scene that's part of a regular game. Easily, yeah.
So the way you've done it with this one, would you say that you have actually managed to use a lot better geometry and stuff like that than you would have been able to?
Oh yeah, of course.
What you're seeing on those scenes would be like in real time on the gear would be like 3 or 4 frames a second.
Right.
Yeah, maybe.
How would
lucky.
that hold up real time on an Oculus?
On the Oculus, you'd probably would probably be getting maybe 60. On a card that's meant to be for the new Oculus, you probably you'd probably be okay. I think.
Have you done testing with the S7, for example, how that compares to that? Because you've done all that stuff on the S6, I assume.
I think that's,
So how does that look on S7?
It probably look the same. The video you saw, if you look at the gear, it's a 4K output, so we output at 4K.
Right.
The Oculus one here will down res it to I think 1280, but the gear will be pretty much 1080 each eye, so it's a pretty high res image. And I was looking at videos on YouTube with the gear because they've got a new. They just released a web viewer which you can watch YouTube videos on, and they're great. They're pretty high def. The screen on the S7 I think is similar res. I don't think it's a 4K res.
Same resolution as S6.
Yeah.
It's just a much better processor. That's what I'm
Yeah.
asking.
Which we already
How many
worked around.
frame rate to get?
Yeah, we worked around it. Yeah. True 4K phones. I think the Sony phone does 4K, but not all the time. We'll display 4K video. But I think as more phones get more powerful and be able to display 4K images as well, like getting just 4K game content, then it'll be super sharp. Like at the moment, it's pretty good, but if you want like what people are expecting from HD, I think that a little bit, maybe a year or two away.
Right.
Cool. Yep.
That terrain and truck and the lady on top, the mountain thing. Did you import to Unity the terrain, or was it After Effects composited?
Well, that one was that was made in Unity, but the stuff you saw on the screens and everything, the little voice thing and that was all composited. So, and also in the aquaponics scene, if you get to look at that as well, there's 3D elements. So basically we can put anything in there. Like this in Adobe, it unwraps the image, lets you put in text or whatever you want, and when you put it back, it puts it in physical space. So it creates a camera inside the software, and it's basically lets you do anything. So any kind of post effects you want, you could have someone's head fly off and whatever. You can pretty much do anything. It's a normal post software. But the fact that it lets you unwrap the image and do it inside that space. And we just started experimenting a little bit more with that. But
before you send out the content to your clients, do you get people's heads to fly off, like just to see what it looks like? No? No.
I have to see that now.
Don't risk sending that.
You're right.
But we came across that close to the end of the project, that we could, because we were doing a lot of it in Unity, and it's pretty cumbersome. And then we found this software, they just released it. We got it approved to buy it, and the benefits of using it are pretty good. So you could pretty much composite anything on there. So we could have had, anything you could do in post, you'd be able to do it with the VR. Yeah.
You're talking about how you got the video separate and everything. I'm assuming that means you're specifically looking at deploying to a collection of hardware, and you'll have the OSIGs for those particular devices set up and everything. Have you in your process looked at how you might publish an experience like this without including the video files in Unity?
But it still works the same way. The plugin itself just wants a path, so it just needs to know a path to look for.
But then you need something like your other system to give the videos as well.
Potentially, yeah. But I mean, there's viewers now, right, that expect the videos to be in a certain location, and then if they are, just... So we actually were controlling it a bit more by having this configuration file that tells the application what to play. We could have just searched that directory and given options for every video in there. That wouldn't be a big modification to the current system.
And another bit of information probably should have told everyone about. If you do 3D video content now, 360 content if you've got an S6 and you do a 360 ski image or whatever, you just put it in the Oculus folder, videos or movies, and you can use their player to look at it. And so that's how we devved a lot of our stuff. We could look at it before these guys did the video flag. So you can actually look at your content now, you can submit it, it can be put on YouTube, you can publish it.
What you could do though is create some UI that tells it, that allows you to select where to look as well.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could come up with a way to actually bundle the video, like your one-thing solution, but publish it, because I don't know how that.
In that case, it'd have to be in the application itself, so in the APK, which means putting inside streaming assets so that Unity doesn't convert it.
Or it can download it from an external.
Or it can download it. Like you could do it that way, so that it creates the directory that it's looking for and downloads it.
And you'll notice heaps of games do that now. You'll have a small APK installed.
Especially on Android, where you've got limits for what you can download. So these things, you're like, oh look, it's only 100 meg. That's convenient. That's exactly the max. And then you get it, and it's got 2 gig download coming your way. Yeah. Yeah.
Would you be able to elaborate, or anyone there elaborate on the audio integration process that you guys use for this, or whether what sort of focus that was, or if that was trying to create a realistic sort of 3D feel to that as well, or not?
So there's a reason why we skipped over that, because we did a really shit job. Audio is probably the part where at the moment it's still very new. So we wanted to use binaural sound, which is 3D audio. There are tools that have come out now to be able to do that a little bit better, because you have to be able to record that out of Unity with a certain type of rig. So we have stereo, but if there's a truck moving past and you turn your head, it's still going to be left to right.
So that was sort of one of the big, I guess, pros in the column for not doing video, because then we'll be able to actually just use Unity and have 3D sound, and it just works the same way, the same way that the game does. But it sort of got outweighed by all the other pros, and we didn't have a way to sort of solve that problem at the time. That'll change pretty rapidly. Lots of people are working on it, because it's been identified as sort of the last big hurdle for just getting sort of 3D spatial content in. So I don't think it'll take long before that's solved, but for us, there's no way in Unity that we had at the time to be able to record. Was it record the audio of the problem? Because there are some players that can play the file.
Recording was okay. We'd be able to record it, but it was recording that in the 3D spatial space. Rory worked on the recording. So you might talk about it.
If you want to tell you a bit about our Unity for that, we just wanted to find a solution that worked well with our workflow for capturing having Unity and then playback. There are solutions out there for full sonic audio, which is where it's like surround sound, but not just 5 channels, it actually has positioning for where all the sounds coming from. But getting that to work with Unity is quite complicated. We just didn't find a solution to work for fitting the process.
I think there's potential syncing issues as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, we would have to then add all the sound inside Unity and then try to record that in and then make the player recognise that as well. None of the base Oculus players in the device do it, so they don't do it yet. They're actually working on it now, because a lot of the videos they want to do of music concerts and stuff like that need to be binaural, so they actually take this microphone that has 4 ears on it and they record the sound like that. So we'd have to try to recreate that in Unity, but it just, like Rory said, there was nothing there when we were doing this.
The audio it was just very difficult. It was a bit of a minefield, and it was just too much. There was just too much potential risk and trouble there for the sort of limited time span we had to deliver this project. Yeah, so we given a bit longer, given more tech and sort of software that's coming out, we could have done a better job on that.
Probably definitely be something we look at very quickly on the next sort of project that comes up that's similar to this. We'll be sort of collating everything that's been done in between to see if there's an option there, because definitely lots of people working.